Have you ever paused to think about what it means to age with purpose and grace? How do we face the inevitability of time, the ache of loneliness, and the weight of loss? This video isn't simply about getting older, it's a celebration of embracing life's later chapters with resilience and meaning. Meet Paul Thompson. At 62, his life has been a blend of triumph and sorrow. He's felt the deep pain of losing his wife and the quiet distance as his children build their own lives. Paul's journey resonates with many of us, reflecting the shared challenges and victories that come with age. Why stay with us for this story? Because Paul's experiences speak to something universal. His path reveals lessons in navigating loss, rebuilding connections, and rediscovering joy in unexpected places. Through Paul, we'll explore how to find peace and strength even in solitude. His bond with Laura, a woman who entered his life unexpectedly, offers profound insights into aging with courage and an open heart. Paul's journey also touches on the tough choices seniors face, like deciding when to move into a care facility. We'll share how to approach these moments with clarity, confidence, and grace. By the end of this video, you'll gain a fresh perspective on treasuring relationships, nurturing independence, and shaping a purposeful life as the years unfold. Whether you're in your 60s, 70s, or beyond, Paul's story will inspire you to embrace life fully, no matter the challenges. Don't miss the chance to uncover these life-affirming lessons. Subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay connected. Your support means the world to us. If this story resonates, help us share its message. Like, share, and leave a 1 in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts and stories as we continue to grow together, creating videos that truly matter. Now, let's dive into the story. I always pictured retirement as a peaceful chapter, a time when I could finally exhale, savor the rewards of a life well lived, and bask in the quiet comfort of my hard-earned years. I had prepared for it too. Every plan carefully laid out, each step measured to ensure the transition would be smooth. But life has a funny way of rearranging your best-laid plans. I didn't see it coming, retiring earlier than expected, with little time to adjust to this new, unfamiliar rhythm. Financially, I was secure. I'd always been careful, budgeting wisely and setting aside a cushion for unforeseen times. But nothing could prepare me for the void, the haunting stillness that began to settle in like an unwelcome guest. You see, there was a time when my home was alive with sound and movement. My son Luke and my daughter Laura were my everything. Back then, the air was filled with their laughter, their footsteps, and their endless chatter about school and dreams. But life, as it always does, marched forward. Luke and Laura grew up, started families of their own, and built beautiful lives. I was proud, so proud. But with their absence, the house seemed to grow larger, colder, quieter. The silence became deafening after Sarah, my wife, passed away. She had been my rock, my partner through every twist and turn. Losing her left an ache that time hasn't managed to dull. And as my children got busier with their own lives, visits became less frequent. Slowly, I found myself adrift, surrounded by walls that once held memories, but now seemed to press in on me with an unsettling stillness. One afternoon, I sat alone in the living room, lost in the vast quiet. The only sounds were the ticking of the old wall clock and the faint hum of cars outside. Even my own breath felt too loud, a reminder of the stillness that engulfed me. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it wasn't so bad, but the emptiness had a way of creeping in, wrapping around me like a cold fog. Then the phone rang, a sudden break in the quiet. Luke's voice came through, hurried and tense. "Hey, Dad, I'm swamped with work tonight. I probably won't make it over," he said, a note of guilt laced in his words. I swallowed the lump in my throat and tried to sound unfazed. "That's okay, Luke. Take care of what you need to. I'm good here," I said, forcing a lightness I didn't feel. When the call ended, the silence returned, sharper than before. I sat there, staring at nothing, feeling a deep ache in the pit of my stomach. It wasn't just loneliness, it was a realization. The years I had spent tirelessly building a life for my family had led me here, to a quiet house, an empty chair, and the echo of a life that used to be full. The next day, John, my neighbor, stopped by. We were about the same age and had shared countless conversations over the years. This time, though, there was an unspoken heaviness between us. He settled into the chair beside me, glancing around at the quiet that mirrored his own life. "So, it's just you now?" he asked, breaking the silence. "Yeah," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, his gaze distant. "Same here, the kids are busy. My wife's wrapped up in her own world. Funny how it all changes, isn't it?" His words hit home, resonating with the ache I had been carrying. "You ever think about what it'll be like?" he asked after a pause. "When it's just you?" The question hung in the air like a lead weight. My stomach churned at the thought, and for the first time, I allowed myself to confront it fully. The idea of being completely alone, of waking up every day to nothing but the sound of my own footsteps, was terrifying. I tried to shrug it off to bury the unease, but it clung to me like a shadow. A few days later, Laura stopped by with her son, Mary. She carried a tray of his favorite childhood meals, the kind she used to make when he scraped his knees or needed cheering up. Maybe she thought it would keep her here longer. But as soon as she crossed the threshold, her words tumbled out. "Dad, I can't stay long. I just wanted Mary to see you. I need to pick up Tim right after." Her voice was clipped, her eyes darting nervously. Mary looked down, clutching her little bag tighter. My heart sank. I forced a smile, though it felt more like a mask. "Don't worry, sweetheart. Go handle your things. I'll be fine here." The lie was bitter, but I said it anyway. Laura nodded, her visit like a gust of wind. Quick, loud, gone in a blink. I walked to the door, watching them disappear down the path. Their laughter faded, swallowed by the quiet. That stillness wrapped around me, heavier than ever. I felt it deep, that sharp, familiar pang of being left behind. The silence crept into every corner of the house. I leaned against the doorframe, my chest tight. My throat burned as I swallowed back tears. No amount of distraction could shake the weight of that moment. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling. The question I'd been avoiding rose again, relentless. What happens when you're truly alone? I hated how fragile I felt. The days blurred into one another, each more empty than the last. I couldn't let it go on. I refused to let loneliness define me. 6 months later, I found my footing. My world shifted, not by leaps, but in steady steps. I built a routine that grounded me. Meals at the same time each day. Walks that stretched into thoughtful wanderings. Conversations with faces that became familiar over time. I didn't just exist anymore. I lived. I embraced the small joys, the clatter of chess pieces, the warmth of sunlight streaming through the windows, the simple comfort of a shared smile. What once felt like solitude now felt like sanctuary. Luke and Laura checked in often, their calls filled with worry. "You sure you're okay, Dad?" Luke asked one evening. His concern was genuine, but I knew they couldn't fully grasp my calm. "I'm fine," I told him. "Really." And I meant it. I had learned to appreciate the quiet, to find peace in the stillness. But then, life threw another curveball. It was a sunny afternoon, the kind that begs you to sit outside and soak it all in. I'd just finished lunch and was letting the warmth of the day settle over me when the phone rang. Luke's voice came through, strained and urgent. "Dad," he said, pausing to steady himself. "There's been an accident. Mrs. Hope's in the hospital." The words struck me hard, like a sudden gust that knocks the air out of your lungs. My grip on the phone slipped for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest. "What? What happened? Is she okay?" The words stumbled out, barely audible. "I don't have all the details," Luke admitted, his voice shaking. "I'm at the hospital now. Do you want me to come get you?" I felt the weight of his words sink in, heavy and suffocating. Mrs. Hope. Her face flashed in my mind, a constant in my life, someone who always managed to ground me. And now, this. I hung up, hands trembling, and called the nursing home staff to arrange a ride. My mind raced, filling with fragmented thoughts. The last time I saw her, I'd joked about her stubbornness, told her to take care of herself, and now she was fighting for her life. The world felt off its axis, unsteady, unfamiliar. I braced myself, knowing nothing would ever quite be the same. The memory of her smile lingered in my mind like a ghost refusing to fade. That bright, warm smile, the kind that made the world feel lighter, now haunted me. It was all I could see. All I could think of was how delicate life is, how it slips through our fingers when we least expect it. When I pulled up to the hospital, I spotted Luke and Laura standing just outside the emergency room. Their faces, etched with worry, hollow with fear, sent a cold rush through me. It hit like a tidal wave. This wasn't just some passing scare. This was real. Luke's hands were trembling as he helped me to a chair. "Dad," he said, his voice heavy with unshed tears, "the doctors are doing everything they can, but it's bad, really bad." His words were a punch to the gut. I couldn't meet his gaze. My eyes locked onto the surgical room's blinking red light, its steady pulse mocking my growing despair. My chest felt like it was caving in as I clung to a single thread of hope, whispering prayers into the suffocating silence. The minutes dragged on, each one heavier than the last. Time felt warped, every second an eternity. The sterile hospital air was thick with dread, and I felt trapped in that small, cold waiting room, suffocated by the weight of my own helplessness. Finally, the door swung open, and a doctor emerged. I shot to my feet, desperate for answers, my heart hammering in my chest. "How is she?" I managed to ask, my voice barely audible, strangled by the lump in my throat. The doctor's face gave nothing away at first, but his weary eyes spoke volumes. He sighed, his words like shards of glass. "The injuries are severe," he said quietly. "You need to prepare yourself for the worst." Those words shattered me. My knees buckled, and Luke had to catch me before I collapsed. Everything blurred, sounds, sights, even my own thoughts. Then I saw her. A nurse pushed her bed down the hallway, and my breath hitched. Mrs. Hope. My Mrs. Hope. The vibrant woman who had brought light to every dark corner of my life now looked so pale, so fragile, almost unrecognizable. Her chest barely rose with each shallow breath. I stumbled toward her, my trembling hands reaching out. I grasped her icy hand, my fingers wrapping around hers as if holding on could tether her to this world. "Please, Mrs. Hope," I whispered, my voice cracking, tears streaming down my face. "You promised we'd grow old together. You can't leave me now. You can't." For a moment, her eyelids fluttered, and hope flared inside me like a fragile spark. I leaned closer, waiting, willing her to say something. Anything. But all that came was a single tear slipping down her cheek. It tore through me, leaving nothing but raw, searing pain. "Stay with me," I begged, my voice a broken whisper. "Please, stay." Luke and Laura stood nearby, their grief mirrored in their silent, tear-filled eyes. They knew, just like I did, that no words could fix this. No comforting hand on my shoulder could lift the crushing weight of what was happening. Hours stretched into an unbearable night. I refused to leave her side, clutching her hand like a lifeline. I whispered to her, recounting every memory, every moment that had defined our lives together. Then, just before dawn, her eyes flickered open once more. Her lips parted, and her faint voice reached me like the rustling of dry leaves in the wind. "Mr. Thompson," she breathed, her words fragile, fading. "Live well, for both of us." Her hand tightened around mine for the briefest moment, then softened. One final breath escaped her lips, and her eyes closed, peaceful at last. The silence that followed was deafening, a void that consumed everything. I didn't move. Couldn't. My hand remained wrapped around hers, now so lifeless, so cold. "Mrs. Hope, please don't go," I choked out, my voice breaking under the weight of my grief. But the only response was the relentless hum of the machines, their sterile beeps, a cruel reminder of her absence. A scream built inside me, raw and primal, but I couldn't release it. I sat there, paralyzed by loss, shattered into a million pieces. She was more than my love. She was my anchor, my compass, the one who saw the best in me even when I couldn't. And now, she was gone. The emptiness she left behind felt vast and endless, a cavern I would never escape. And yet her words echoed in my heart, faint but unyielding. "Live well." I stayed by her side a while longer, clinging to those words like a lifeline, knowing they would be the only thing to carry me forward in the endless days to come. The world felt different now, colder, harsher, as though the very air had turned against me. Each day became an unending struggle, a fog that swallowed every moment. I tried to push through, but grief weighed me down, heavier than any physical burden. Joy felt like something distant, something I could no longer reach. The comfort others offered only deepened the silence, making the loneliness more acute. Life in the nursing home lost its meaning. Time blurred into one long, empty stretch. Without her, the hours felt pointless. Friends, residents, everyone noticed. They didn't need to say a word. I could see the pity in their eyes. It was the unspoken truth between us all. Their presence was a small comfort, but nothing could heal the hole inside me. At our age, losses aren't just fleeting moments. They become part of who we are, etched into our souls. There are some gaps that nothing can fill, no matter how hard you try. And this loss, felt like a piece of me had been torn away. Luke and Laura brought their children, hoping their laughter would light something inside me. They thought maybe innocence could chase away the darkness. I wanted so badly to feel that joy, to let their energy lift me up, but it didn't happen. Nothing could chase away the ache that had settled deep in my chest. I smiled at them, a feeble attempt to reassure them I was okay, but inside I was far from it. The silence between us stretched, thick with the absence of Mrs. Hope. Then one afternoon, Luke sat next to me, his concern painted all over his face. He couldn't understand why I hadn't moved on, why the sadness still held me so tightly. "Dad," he said, his voice gentle, "you don't have to be sad anymore. Mrs. Hope wouldn't want you to be like this." His words, though full of love, stung like a bitter reminder of what I had lost. "Luke," I said, my voice shaking, "some things can't be fixed with words. Losing someone like that, it feels like the world has collapsed, like everything you knew is slipping away." He fell silent, feeling the weight of what I said. Slowly, he reached for my hand, squeezing it with a tenderness I hadn't expected. "You still have us," he said softly. "We're here, always." His words were warm, and yet they didn't fill the void. They couldn't. The emptiness inside was mine alone to bear. "I know you care, son," I whispered, barely able to speak, "but some losses, you don't just get over them." Not really. A few days later, while walking through the garden to clear my mind, I saw a new resident, a man much like me, his face worn with sorrow, eyes heavy with a quiet pain. I recognized that look. I'd worn it myself when I first arrived. Something in me stirred. I walked over to him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Are you new here?" I asked softly. "Would you like some company?" He nodded, his gratitude unspoken but clear in the way his shoulders relaxed. We walked side by side, wordlessly, the peace of the garden surrounding us. Neither of us needed to speak. There was a shared understanding in the silence, a recognition of the weight of life's years and losses. In that moment, we were simply two souls, connected by the simple act of walking together. That night, I lay in bed, the quiet of the room heavy with memories of Mrs. Hope. Her laugh, her kind voice, her gentle touch, those were the moments I held closest now. They were all that remained of her. It was hard to imagine life without her in it. But in the quiet of the night, I realized something. She might be gone, but the love she gave, the care she showed, would never leave me. It was a part of me now, but woven into the very fabric of my heart. For the first time in a long while, I felt a small shift inside me. The grief was still there, but it wasn't suffocating me anymore. It had softened, just a little. And maybe that was enough, at least for now. Mrs. Hope's passing had taken more than just her presence from me. It had given me a lesson, one I hadn't expected. Life isn't about the things we accumulate, the successes we achieve. It's about the people we connect with, the relationships we build. Whether they're lifelong or fleeting, these connections are the ones that truly matter. They are the ones that fill the emptiness inside us, the ones that give life meaning. Each relationship is a thread in the tapestry of our lives. Together, they create something beautiful. Without them, life feels incomplete. They are the anchors that hold us steady when everything else feels like it's slipping away. In a world of constant change, these bonds are the rare constants we can rely on. The morning after Mrs. Hope passed, I stood in the garden, the warmth of the sun on my face, a stark contrast to the coldness in my heart. The breeze whispered through the trees, but my thoughts were elsewhere. It was in that quiet moment that I understood something deep. Nothing in life lasts forever, but love, real love, the love we share with others, it endures. It stays with us even after everything else fades. Those shared moments, The kindnesses we give and receive, they are what help us weather the storms. They are the things that give us strength when we feel like we can't go on. And in the end, they're the only things that truly remain. I once read something by the Japanese author Haruki Murakami that struck me. He talked about how time doesn't just pass, it sneaks up on you. One moment you're young, and then, almost without realizing it, time has slipped away. The years have stacked up, and suddenly you look in the mirror and see the subtle signs of age. The gray hairs, the lines on your face, they're a reminder that the past is behind you, whether you're ready for it or not. And then as you age, the world starts treating you differently. People call you sir or ma'am, and you feel it. Feel the weight of those words. You're no longer young. And that realization, that slow, quiet truth, is harder to accept than you might think. It's one of those moments where the world goes silent and you know there's nothing left to say. Aging isn't something most people talk about. We try to push it away, pretend it's not happening, but eventually, it hits you. The truth you can't ignore. It's not about fearing the passing years, though. It's about coming to terms with the fact that we can't hold on to youth forever. But what we can hold on to, what we must hold on to, is the love, the connections, the bonds we've made along the way. Those are the things that truly matter. Those are the things that give life its meaning. We all walk this path alone, even when surrounded by others. The people around us can offer comfort, but only we can understand the journey we've traveled. And sometimes, instead of filling the silence with words, we sit with it, because in the quiet, we find understanding. We find the truth that no one else can give us. The comfort we seek is often the one we give ourselves. The quiet moments hold a sacred kind of space. It's where we truly hear our own thoughts and feel the steady pulse of our hearts. When night descends and the world slips into peaceful slumber, you'll find yourself connected to the rhythm of your heartbeat. Alone, yes, but never lonely. Solitude in its purest form brings a profound sense of freedom, a quiet comfort in knowing that you no longer need anyone's approval. Their worries, their opinions, fade into the distance, no longer a weight on your shoulders. You start trusting yourself more than the fleeting judgments of others. Time slips by, sometimes unnoticed, and as the years pass, you realize that the noise of the world doesn't grow louder, but quieter. Not because there's nothing left to say, but because there's nothing more that needs to be said. Slowly, people begin to understand that silence speaks volumes. How many of those around you truly understand your journey? Few, if any. And there are times when it feels like no one really listens, but maybe that's okay. Sometimes words of comfort mask deeper truths, truths we aren't yet ready to face. So we turn to silence. It is in the stillness that clarity emerges, and we hear our hearts speak plainly, without interference. Adversity often feels like an unshakable presence, overshadowing every advantage we may possess. Life is full of struggles, and failure can sometimes seem inevitable. But through it all, we learn to accept what lies beyond our control. In that acceptance comes peace. You start to realize that as long as you've given your best, you can stand tall, free from shame. Self-respect is not about pride, but humility. You recognize your goodness, but carry it with grace, never letting it inflate your ego. Humility becomes part of your essence, and through it, you earn true respect. As the years pass, you can't help but notice how much you've changed. The transformation is often subtle, barely perceptible at times, but undeniably real. You've grown, evolved with time. And while the world around you shifts, one truth stands clear. You are more than you ever imagined possible. The struggles, the joys, the lessons, they've shaped you. Now you stand stronger, wiser, more aware of life's fleeting beauty. Old age has been a relentless teacher, reshaping my spirit, deepening my understanding of life, and most profoundly, transforming my view of love. I once thought love was simple, an unbreakable bond between two people who held hands through the years, growing old together side by side. I believed love was an anchor, something that would always keep us grounded, no matter what time might bring. But with the unfolding of years, a bittersweet truth emerged. Many relationships, like the petals of a flower, bloom brightly but fade away too quickly. They are temporary, more about the moments shared than the eternity we once imagined. Life moves so swiftly that the past, present, and future blur together. We begin to realize with quiet sorrow that the people who once seemed irreplaceable have either changed or drifted from our lives. Even the memories we once cherished, vibrant and full of life, slowly lose their color with time. As you live longer, you come to understand that life, with all its beauty and complexity, is both joy and sorrow. There are moments when accepting this truth feels impossible. In the deepest corners of your soul, you struggle to find peace with it. Yet there's a quiet calm that arrives with the recognition that not everything is meant to stay the same. Some things, once perfect in our eyes, simply lose their luster. We must learn to let go. The things that once upset you, the moments you would have criticized or tried to change, begin to fade into the background. You come to realize that some things simply are. No amount of wishing can alter their course. Life doesn't ask for permission to change. It simply does. People will disappoint you, and you will disappoint yourself. It's a hard truth, but one we must face. We often give so much of ourselves to others, only to feel empty when it's not reciprocated. Those who once needed you now seem to expect your love and care as if it's something they can always count on. I've learned, sometimes the hard way, that I must treat myself with more kindness. I must guard my heart and, when necessary, be a little colder to preserve my well-being. As time goes on, you begin to see disappointment for what it truly is, a constant companion. The more of yourself you give, the more vulnerable you become to being let down. But in that vulnerability, there's a strange beauty. It's a reminder that you're alive, still hoping, still reaching for something better. With time, you realize it's foolish to place all your hopes in one thing. Hope, though powerful, can also be a source of great disappointment. It's in this truth that you begin to learn the delicate balance between hope and acceptance. There are moments when you must push forward with everything you have, and others when you must step back, breathe, and let things unfold as they will. The key is balance, hope and disappointment together. When you find it, you stop worrying so much about the outcome. What truly matters is not what you gain or lose, but how you carry yourself through it all, how you keep moving forward with grace no matter the challenges life brings. In the end, after everything, the love, the loss, the hope, the disappointment, one truth stands above all. The only way to avoid true failure is to rely on yourself. While the support of others can be comforting, there's a deeper strength that comes from knowing that, in the end, you are the one who will always be there for you. When the world feels uncertain and you have no one else to turn to, you'll discover the strength within. This is the moment when you rise, not because you have to, but because you realize you always had the strength inside you. That is, without question, the greatest gift you can give yourself. As we conclude this reflection, I invite you to think deeply about the lessons you've learned. Life has a way of teaching us so much about love, loss, hope, and the incredible strength within us. What lesson resonates with you today? How will it influence your actions moving forward? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share one lesson you've learned and how you'll put it into practice in the comments below. Your insights might inspire and uplift others on the same journey. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.